Really glad to see you. Thanks for joining in. And I talked a little bit about my own divorce from an alleged narcissist. And right now, the question keeps recurring from clients and the audience. How did I make that decision? How did I get clear on it? Because so many seem to really be struggling. And divorce is not what I wanted. It was not my goal. I came from a home of divorce, and I really wanted to keep my little family together at all costs. And I did for 15 years. But what I found was I was becoming more and more drained. And it was particularly obvious once my husband and I had our son. And he was a writer and a producer and a director and was very focused on that. And I was a producer. And a lot of my energies were going to him up until the point that we had our son. And it wasn't really possible for me to really keep up that kind of rate of outflow now that we had a baby in the house. And I never felt comfortable about asking him for help because I had grown up in a family where that was very dangerous and you didn't really allow your vulnerability out. You just kept your head down and you move forward. And I just intuitively felt if I would make any waves or any requests, it was going to rock the boat. So that was my fault and my sort of misgiving that I had to work with. And my fear of abandonment was really, really deep. So as the time was going on, I further noticed how much I was feeding out and not receiving the support back and getting more and more resentful towards my husband. And ultimately, it came to a head once we moved out of our little rental into our first home, which I bought and paid for the family together. And having a home and being responsible. I mean, I was responsible for the property taxes, the mortgage, the bulk of the payments, the maintenance and groceries. And I mean, it was just like on automatic and not really considering and getting more and more drained and more resentful. But when I really looked carefully at the idea of closing out this marriage and moving on, I was stuck. I was so fearful about getting out. And my friends and those who knew me didn't really understand where I was coming from. They saw me as really successful and hauling three-quarters of the load at that point, regardless. And I was a strong, career person on my own, getting my own gigs as a consultant and freelancer. So didn't really make sense to them. But the panic in me was so deep. So finally, it became very evident that I could no longer go on with the circumstance as it was. And I know there are a lot of you in that same circumstance or have been in that circumstance at other points. And I really had to go within and I was tired of being tired. And I saw out into the future that I was going to be working third shift at Walmart if I let this continue. And I also realized I was setting a bad example for my son as far as what a man, what is expected of a man. And I also had issues of my own, like sort of blocking that out of my own fear of abandonment. So finally it came to a head and I thought, I really don't want to leave. So I learned about something called a post-nuptial agreement, and that was supposed to help your partner become more fiscally responsible within the relationship because it would be in black and white. It would be a legal agreement. So I suggested this to my ex-husband to be, and yeah, don't do that with an alleged narcissist. I mean, I sort of knew better, but I was grabbing at straws because I really didn't want to leave this relationship and break up my family. So he agreed wholeheartedly. Oh, yes, we should do this. So We got to the last point in what was mediation on this post-nuptial agreement. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's going to agree. My marriage is saved. Our family will not be split up. I won't have to go through this horrendous divorce. So this is the last point of the mediation. And we were in this small, hot, airless room with no windows. And we got to this last point, and I thought, okay, this is going to be it. He folded his arms over his chest, and his eyes went in those little slits, those little lizard-like slits, and he said, "I'm hiring an attorney, and I'm filing for divorce." And it knocked the wind out of me. But what I also felt was this voice coming over my right shoulder and out through my heart saying, this is the universe doing for you what you cannot do for yourself. And by that time, I was well aware that I had an intuitive, strong voice. And I was so clear that there were so many times I had not followed that voice. And here was the perfect storm coming together for me to follow it. And the universe was even telling me, we've got your back. We're taking you through this one. You're not going to get around it this time. So I remember leaving that mediation session and going back to what was our home. And it was a hellish ride of one calendar year from that point forward. I needed everything. I needed my silent meditation retreat experience, my experience getting sober and working with clinical depression, my experience of all the modalities, the therapeutic modalities I had done up to that point. And certainly my experience in doing endurance races, marathons, and triathlons, because that's what it took. I learned very quickly the sort of character traits of an alleged narcissist. And it was highly recommended that you hold no contact while going through a divorce with an alleged narcissist because they know your buttons, they know the buttons to press, they know how to manipulate you very clearly. And so I decided I was going to hold no contact. Everything was going to be in writing. And it was going to be brief and to the point because my ex-husband to be wouldn't give up the master bedroom in the home that I had bought and maintained for our family. And I'm laughing now. It wasn't funny then at all. But I took a mattress from the master and I drug it across the floor of our home into a partial conversion in our garage. And I put that mattress on the floor and closed the door. And I realized this is where my lack of self-esteem, my lack of worth, my lack of the ability to really go inside my heart and live from within got to me to. Here I was. It was a billboard that fell on my head. And pretty quickly, I learned that that little room, that little partial conversion in our garage was my monastery. And that's where I was going to do the work, the internal work that it took to extricate myself from this marriage in an ethical way. And it was probably the hardest thing that I've done in my life, but I needed that extreme to actually face it and move through it. And it was brutal. And part of that work of going within was doing more somatic modalities, like really going into the core of my being and teasing out the pockets of trauma, the feelings, the colors, the texture, the tone, and really going deep into them and then clearing that and replacing it in a positive way. And it may sound like hooey, but I've done so much talk therapy, and talk therapy helped me get a storyline down of, my trajectory, but it didn't take the trauma away. It turned me full circle right back into the trauma center where I had begun that walk. And it was hell. It was hell on earth. And it was very hard to keep no contact with a man that I had loved and given a lot of myself to. and to continue to awaken to who he really was in character and who he really was as a human being. And I was told to keep a gratitude list for what I was grateful for in that circumstance. And some days that was what would get me through the day because I wanted to rage. I mean, this seems so wrong and just I couldn't believe that lawyers were allowing this to happen. Even my lawyers said, something's going to have to change the divorce code because I see so many women playing out this role now and having to carry this insidiousness. Um, so ultimately, it was a calendar year, and we came to a settlement, and I could write him a six-figure check, and he cleared out. And today I call him my greatest guru. And people don't understand, like, what are you talking about? This man taught me finally how to go inside and start living from the inside out rather than getting these accolades from the outside in for carrying my family for triathlons and national swim meets and all this external stuff. No, I finally was able to go in and go, wow, you're really brave. You're strong. You're competent. You're being the best mom you can be. You're facing your biggest horror of being abandoned. You're facing it head on and walking through it. And getting that piece of myself back would not have happened if I had not had that experience foisted upon me and chosen to walk through it from beginning, middle to end. And no, it was not easy. It was brutal. And it took me a long time to recover from that spot. But I always remembered that small voice within me that this is the universe doing for you what you cannot do for yourself. And I found all sorts of help. I found all sorts of support. I humbled myself and reached out for support. And there's a lot of other things that I did that, I'd be happy to share with you one to one if that's appealing. But we can face our biggest horrors and we can see them as gifts. It was like I was lifting up a big boulder and seeing all this muck underneath, but there was all this sparkling fool's gold in there. And now I've helped other people walk through the same, whatever the trauma might be, whether it's a divorce or it's a health crisis, or if it's a job loss, or if it's just living the life and seeing the systems crumble that we relied upon. There are ways to walk through it as best you can. And so I really want to encourage those of you that are reaching out for that perfect storm circumstance to walk through, and you're walking through it. My hat's off to you. And I'm glad here we can be here for each other. And if this resonates and you want to connect, my website is susangold.us. And I'm really grateful that we got together here because going within and living from the inside out now is going to be more important than ever. And I know many of you are seeing that play out. So I'm here for you. You are not alone, and we are in this together. I'll see you next time.